As always, if you don't wish to be recorded, you're welcome to keep your camera off or step away from the webinar as you wish, knowing that you'll be able to access it later. Hello, everyone. My name is Johanna Byrd, Executive Director of the National Association of Social Workers Pennsylvania chapter. Happy to be here today. Thank you for everyone for coming and for potentially participating in District Days. I will pass it to all of my co-presenters to introduce themselves. And Angie, I guess I'll start with you.
Hi everyone, Angie Armbrust with McNeil's Winter Group. We are the state government relations representative for NASW-PA. So representing you in front of state government in Harrisburg full-time. My colleague Natalie Cook is on with me as well. We'll pass it over to President McNeil.
Thanks. Glad that everyone can make it tonight. I'm actually going to pass it to Tim because I would like for you to introduce yourself, and then that way I'll introduce and then continue with my opening remarks. So Tim, would you like to introduce yourself?
Thank you. Yes, I'm President. My honor to be here tonight. I'm glad everybody's so interested in this policy practice topic. I'm the legislative chairman for NASW-PA. I was a member of the Pennsylvania House of Representatives. I decided to leave in 2010, right after I lost the election. That's how it used to work. If you lost the election, you congratulate your opponent and moved on. I teach policy here at Kutztown University now. And I see a couple students on here this evening. I see Isaiah, so welcome. Glad that you can make it. And I just very quickly want to say, policy practice is all about what you get to do and how much you're going to get paid as a social worker. So this definitely falls into what you get to do category. So welcome, and really appreciate your interest in the topic.
All right. So I'm very excited about tonight's topic because this is something that I'm very passionate about. I think most of you have heard me talk and speak about how I'm passionate about advocacy, especially when we're talking about how to help elevate our profession, but also our students at the same time. And so I'm excited about this concept of district days. So I am going to share my screen, and while I'm sharing my screen, I cannot see anyone's faces. I cannot see the chat. So Joanna, Angie, whoever, need to interrupt me and just let me know if someone does have a question. Okay, give me 1 second. Well, if technology would like to work today, give me 1 second. All right, here we go. Okay, can everyone see my screen?
Yep, yes, we can.
Okay, great. So district days. So this is something new that we had just started with this with our chapter. So what exactly is district days? I know probably some of you have seen some of the marketing and thinking like, okay, this sounds great, but what is it? So the primary goal of district days is to advocate for the support and the passage of the two bills that we're going to be talking about tonight by directly engaging with local representatives. And so by coming together as a united front, social workers can ensure that our voices are being heard and that these crucial pieces of legislation gain the momentum they need to pass. So advocacy must be continuous, often, and together. So when we had thought about sort of what is something that we can do, LEAD always has been our most successful advocacy day. You know, this year, again, congratulations to all of you for showing up. We had over 400 attendees. I think we were somewhere around 450. And again, I will continue to reiterate that legislators are still talking about how did you get 450 plus, I would say plus actually, social workers to the Capitol. So if you were at LEAD, please give yourself a round of applause for attending. If you were not at LEAD, hopefully we can see you next year. But thinking about sort of LEAD and the concept of LEAD and how that is geared mostly towards students, we wanted to do something for all social workers. And this includes both NASW members and non-NASW members, because when we are advocating as a chapter for the profession, we're not going in there and just saying specifically our members, we're talking about the profession as a whole. And so this is a cool opportunity for all of us to come together and advocate for the profession and the two bills that we're going to be talking about tonight. And so how does District Days work? So this is a cool opportunity for us to advocate where we're at. So there's no coming to Harrisburg unless you live in Harrisburg, but there's no coming to Harrisburg. This is the opportunity for you to advocate right in your home, especially in your home district. And so we will, I'm sorry, I got to move this because it's actually blocking my screen. And so this is about meeting with your actual local representative. And so the date runs from September 19th to the 30th. The reason why we have sort of that 2-week time frame is because we all know the election is happening. We all know the campaign is going on. And so we wanted to give sort of a 2-week time frame in order for people to be able to contact their legislators and try and set up a meeting. And if we had this on just one day, we don't think it would have been implausible. And so this allows for you to have time over a 2-week period to go and meet with your legislator at your own convenience. So if you're someone who works 9 to 5, see if you can meet with your legislator after 9 to 5. If you're someone like me who has a lunch break, see if you're able to go to meet with your legislator during lunch. If you're someone who cannot make it in person, see if you're able to set up a virtual meeting with your legislator as well. So this allows for sort of that flexibility of whatever your schedule is, whatever you're comfortable with, in order for you to meet with the legislators and advocate for these two bills. So social workers will schedule and attend these meetings with their local representatives. So again, we as a chapter are not setting these meetings up. I know when we have lead, we take the responsibility of setting those meetings up, but because you are in your local district and because we do not have the bandwidth and the capacity to set up meetings for hundreds and hundreds of individual meetings, but we think this is a cool opportunity to practice the skills, right? We talk about how social workers, that we're advocates and, we're talking about writing letters and setting up meetings. Well, this gives us an opportunity to really use those skills that we already know how to do. Later in today's session, you'll hear from our lobbyists and also Tim about how to set up those meetings. But yes, the responsibility of setting up the meetings will be on the actual individual themselves. So during this meeting, you'll present the case for supporting House Bill 1841, which is our licensure compact, and then also House Bill 2272, which is our suite, which is the social work education. No, it is not. It is the social work enrollment education training program. Wow. So acronyms sometimes trip me up, as we can see. And so this is for our student stipend bill. And don't worry, I'll talk a little bit more about that. But share your personal stories, talk about the data that can help support, and then insights to illustrate the importance of these bills for the profession, but also for the communities we serve. And that's why we thought of this District Days, because the representatives want to hear from you directly. Myself, Joanna, and our lobbyists, we're constantly meeting and having meet and greets with elected officials, but we're not always in their district. And so while we're doing that work, they're like, great, but how is this going to affect someone in our district? And so District Days allows us for that opportunity for someone in their district to go and talk to their local representative. Part of this is that you will also be provided with talking points, fact sheets, and other relevant materials to help guide discussion with legislators. So this information will be coming out soon. We do not have that available as of right now, but you will definitely have this before September 19th so that you're going to be able to use this information in your meetings. So important districts. Okay. So some important districts, and again, these are not all of the important districts, but these were the ones that I was able to pull out. And again, once we get more information out to all of you about District Days, we will make sure that this information is a little bit more clear and a little bit more concise. But these are some important districts where if you live within these districts, we really want you to take advantage of this opportunity and go talk to your local representative. So Rep. Kinsey, who is the current chair, who I absolutely adore and love, unfortunately will not be seeking re-election, but he currently is the chair right now. And I will say from personal experience that I got a chance to sit down and speak with him. And he's one of those representatives that 100% gets it. And there's not much that you have to do to convince him. But the importance is that he's the chair. And so he's the one that's going to help move this bill to a vote. And so we really want to make sure that we're hitting his office. Then we have the Republican chair, which is, I believe his last name is pronounced Heffley, so Rep. Heffley. So he's in Carbon County. So I would encourage if he is, and he covers the entire Carbon County. So there's no district. It's just if you live in Carbon County, you are one of his constituents, and so you can set up a meeting with him. So he is actually the Republican chair for the committee, and so he's another important person as well. Then we have Rep. Dan K. Williams. So he's out in Chester County. He's also very important because not only is he in Chester County, but he's also on the subcommittee for drug and alcohol. And I just realized I put Dan K. Williams twice. That is actually incorrect. So the second day of
I was going to mention that the one for the 74th district is the one that's correct. He is 74th, yes. Not 160th.
Yes. So Dan K. Williams for 74th Chester County is correct. Mm-hmm. So Rep. Williams is correct, but not Dan K. Williams. So there is a Representative Williams. He's in the 160th district for Chester and Delaware County, and he's also on the subcommittee for drug and alcohol. So I will correct that and make sure that we get the correct first name, but his last name is Williams.
His first name is Craig.
Thank you, Craig Williams. There we go. See, teamwork makes the dream work. And then we also have Rep. James Struzzi, which I believe he goes by Jim as well. And so he is also on for mental health. And I'm going to be honest, I'm going to butcher this last rep names. I believe is Shiegel. And so he's in the 101st district for Lebanon County. And so these are some important districts that I have found when I was doing some research on who's on the committee. And again, these are committee members. So these are the people that are going to be voting to move the bill out of committee and into vote. And so these are just a few of them. As we continue to get more information and put that out to you, we will begin to learn what are some other important districts as well that we should be targeting. So what are some things that you should do before you go? So first is research. And again, we'll go through that later in the presentation, but research who you're going to meet and have a conversation with. It takes 5 minutes just to Google them. Most of them come up. Look at sort of, their background. Where did they live? Where did they go to school? Something that you can, humanize. Because I think at least when I first started a lot of these conversations with elected officials, I was seeing them as like robots, but they're not. At the end of the day, they are human. They are people and they have thoughts and feelings just like we do. So do a little bit of research of who you're actually going to be speaking with before you go. Find a way that is going to connect with them. We all have very diverse backgrounds as social workers, and building that rapport is something that we all as a consensus as a profession can do pretty well. And so just find that way that you're going to be able to connect with them. Practice your talking points. I do this myself. As many times as I've been meeting with elected officials, I'm going to be honest, I still get nervous till this day. And so just practicing the talking points is very helpful as well. And just remind them of the human piece of this work that we're doing. Again, from experience, a lot of times we elected officials are getting caught up in, the budget, how much is it going to cost? But on the other side of all the policy that we're advocating for, there is a human being. There's a student that has challenges with, going to school and quitting jobs and dealing with sort of the financial burden of pursuing their degree. So remind them of that when we're talking about the compact bill, how this is going to be able to benefit, the profession, but how does this also benefit our community by creating access and accessibility? And then some other fun points is remember to get pictures. And then after you get the pictures, remember to post them. We want to show that social workers are out there, that we're advocating and we're talking to our elected officials. We will be creating cool hashtags for all of you to post pictures and, have that hashtag. But remember to get pictures when you at the end of the meeting and then post them for all to see. And so I'm going to end by just giving a few talking points for the House Bill 2272, which is the SWEET program. So the main focus of this bill is to relieve the social work shortage by creating a program that provides stipends to graduate social work students earning their MSWs. So I know everyone's reading this, and if you're an undergrad, I know you're like, well, what happened to BSWs? It's not that we did not advocate for BSWs. But one thing that I've learned that I'm also not a fan of, but this is just the reality of the situation, is that sometimes you start with where you can and then tack on as you continue to go with advocating for the bills. So we got the advice from Rep. Howard's office, as well as some other legislators, that starting with the MSW is the most beneficial. And then that way we can bring BSWs into the picture as well. This bill seeks to recognize the importance of social workers in the behavioral health spaces across Pennsylvania and make the prospect of pursuing an MSW a more attainable possibility for more social work students. So again, this when we started out this bill, we were saying this is for all social workers. And then as the bill sort of moved through that writing process, they decided to focus on behavioral health because right now that's where most of the workforce shortages are at. So again, there's opportunity to expand this as we continue to do advocacy, which is the importance of these district days as well as LEAD, is that while we're advocating for the specific bills, we can also talk about how a bill like this would also benefit not only social workers in behavioral health spaces, but other spaces in undergraduate. And then lastly, the bill and the SWEET program aim to begin addressing the rapidly increased shortage of social workers by seeking to alleviate some of the financial burden associated with seeking a graduate social work degree. So I know that I went through a lot of information and I'm not going to test you on it and I'm not going to expect you to remember it, but this is sort of just an introduction to district days and the bill. And as I said, we will continue to put information out for all of you more about district days, how it's going to operate, and then also the bills and the talking points. Ooh, okay, Joanna. I think I did mine with the time. So now I'm going to pass it to you.
You did. You're welcome to pass it to me. The only other things I would say about district days in general that I don't think Sierra mentioned, but is something that might make you all feel more comfortable is feel free to go in a group. If that is what you would like to do, like go with colleagues, friends, family members. It doesn't have to be social workers. Obviously it could be. This would be a great thing for classes to do together as like a group project or something like that. There's a lot of different varieties, but don't necessarily feel you have to do it on your own. If that's where you feel more comfortable and you'd rather do it on your own, then that's also perfectly acceptable. But it is something that, is easily able to coordinate with a minimum, like a partner, so that you can, kind of bounce off each other or say the things that you don't necessarily otherwise think of. Kind of like President McNeil and I do with each other all the time, like fill in the gaps of what we of what one or the other on us forgot to mention. So I'm going to talk about the Social Work Compact Bill, and that one is to engage social work, to make social work practice for those who are licensed be able to happen across state lines. We've been hearing for quite some time, because every state makes their own licensure rules and regulations, and that is solidly within the purview between like the breakdown of federal and state government licensure and regulating the people practicing in their state is definitely within the the state realm of responsibility. So when we hear about portability and how complicated it is to, move from one state to another or be able to practice in different states, or like where some of this started was with the military spouses and others that move a lot from place to place, and they might have to move like every year or two, and every year or two they would end up having to start from scratch with licensure. They'd still have their experience, they'd still have like their passing test scores on the national exams, but they'd have the challenges of just having to document it over and over again and having it take a lot of time. Then we had COVID hit, and that, of course, leads to like a sharp uptick in the amount of online counseling that we had. And even within that, like during the time of COVID, we had some waivers that would allow you to practice across state lines. So, for example, if you're a college student who was seeing a therapist at home, and that was somebody that you were comfortable with and had a working relationship with, and then you go to college for the first time, and that's in a different state, that you might want to choose to stick with your own therapist instead of having to move across state lines, or find a new therapist in your area of practice. So that's the kind of reason why it's practical. So what was created to address this is what's happened with a lot of professions: nurses, physical therapists, psychologists, and others, where they will create a compact, and they will basically have an exchange between the states that are participating to be able to say, if you have a license in one of these states, then you're able to practice in all of them. That's not going to give us like a national credential unless all 50 states, join the compact. But it does go a lot farther and makes the licenses a lot more portable than they have been. So the creation of that law, it has to pass exactly the same language in every state where it comes up. And I'm going to share my screen, but I'm also going to share the website because it will continue to be an available resource for all of you that you can utilize at your own convenience as well. So again, I'm going to share my screen. Okay. Hopefully, I know right at the moment I'm on the licensure committee's page, but when I change over, does it go to the compact map?
Yes.
Okay, awesome. All right. So as of last year, only one state had passed this, and that was Missouri. Then we had this year, and now it's 22. Which is definitely enough. We had to get up to 7 before the compact started going into effect. But we're definitely within that range, and actually within the next couple of weeks, the first organizing meeting of the compact states will be happening. We're one of only a few that are pending at the moment. Part of the reason why we're the only ones pending is because most state legislatures do short-term sessions, and so most state legislatures are closed at the moment, and only like Pennsylvania and New Jersey and North Carolina still have active open bills. Everybody else, you'll see a whole new flux of pending legislation coming up next year in like March and April. Educational resources, you can see there's a whole bunch of materials that you'd be able to access. You can read the entire bill itself, top to bottom, more about the commission, like a general fact sheet, impact and benefits specific to military families. There's whole lists of things that, that are here for availability and access. We have some that are a little bit more Pennsylvania specific, that are good talking points. I think we're likely to see one of the biggest obstacles to this was that up until very recently, there was a barrier to getting this passed with FBI background checks not being transmittable to compact boards. And because of that flaw, there was a hesitancy amongst the legislature to pass any new compact bills in Pennsylvania. We have actually passed a bill to address that, and that is in effect now. And now we're starting to see some interest in getting this bill passed. So this one is actually very timely that we're having our district days at this particular moment in time, because we actually got notification just a little bit ago that the House Licensure Committee may be picking this up and is soliciting feedback at this very moment. So it's a really good time to reach out to our legislators. Okay, but I did want to specify there, and again, we'll probably provide links to a lot of this, but kind of like how President McNeil earlier was mentioning the folks who were important related to the SWEET Act. The House Professional Licensure Committee would be the next group to see the compact bill. And you can find any of the committee information online as well, and we will link back to this when we're putting all of the resources together. But you can see that the chairs are Frank Burns and Carl Metzger, and then if you scroll down, you can get to every member of the committee. So you'd be able to double check. The main purpose of knowing this kind of information is to see, like, okay, I know that my representative is, Representative Smith, just to, make up name, is Representative Smith a member of the Professional Licensure Committee, which in this case, obviously they are not a member because there is no Smith on this on this committee. So that would make a difference, because if I was meeting with somebody, if my representative were Arvind Venkat, for example, I might say, hey, you're on the committee. It's really important that we talk about this and that you're knowledgeable about this and that you're supporting this bill because you're on the committee. If they weren't, if I'm talking to my Representative Smith, I'd be far more likely to just tailor the message accordingly and say, after it goes to professional licensure, it'll go to the full House floor or the Appropriations Committee or something like that. Which I think is a pretty natural segue into passing the baton over to Angie, who's going to talk a little bit about like how to find your legislator and know who they are, and what committees they're on and all of that.
Thank you, Johanna. Yes, so I do also have a really quick PowerPoint that's not very long, but I love the idea of kind of doing the live click through on the General Assembly's website. So I'll do a little bit of that as well, but let me share my screen for the PowerPoint. Okay. Can we see that? All right. So the how to contact your representative. You're going to click this link, and I've let Johanna know that I'm more than happy to share this PowerPoint with everybody. So it's available to you. And I know Tim had also put a link to the legislature's website in the chat earlier too. So you're going to click this website, and you're going to search over here where my arrow is pointing. If you squint really, really small, you'll see it says your address. That's allowing you to look for your representative according to your home address. Now, I do want to say, and I forgot to note this in my presentation when I was creating it, that I do realize we have some students in the audience tonight. And I know some of you are probably living not at home, but on a college campus. So, and you may not be home in that window of time where we're asking you to reach out to your representatives. So in that case, I think it's fine for you to use your campus address and say, you know, I am a social work student at University of whatever. You're a constituent while you were there. You are the university that you attend is, you know, a constituent of the representative in that area. So it's still important for them to hear from you too. I used my home address just as an example to show what this looks like once you do type your address in. My personal representative is former NASW-PA's Legislator of the Year, Representative Patty Kim here in Central PA. So this is what it looks like when you click. I've highlighted where it says PA House. Again, we are targeting representatives in the PA House. We're not really focusing on the Pennsylvania Senate because both the bills we're advocating for are House bills that have not yet been voted out of the House. So we're really just focusing our attention there. We are not advocating towards our U.S. House or U.S. Senate, even though they also show up. That's for your NASW national organization. They do events where they'll do advocacy in D.C. Certainly encourage people to take part in that too, but we are focused here in PA and most specifically in the Pennsylvania House. You'll see where it's highlighted, Rep. Kim's name is a link. When you click that link, it brings it up her personal page on the legislature's website. Everybody has one of these pages. It's very generic and kind of limited information. So, but what I did want to point out is highlighted there on the left, it says district, and that's got a phone number and street address, and I think even a fax number for her district office. That is definitely the office that you want to be reaching out to because we're asking you to do these meetings in the district, not in the Harrisburg office. I also highlighted that little globe. That's the link to everybody's website. I guess it was for when, it was the World Wide Web. That's why it's a globe icon, but that will take you directly to her website. There's much more information there. That's where, as President McNeil was outlining, when you do your research, that's where her biography is going to be. That's where there will be photos, there will be press releases, there will be, issues that are important to her are going to be highlighted there. And I highly encourage everybody always to read the bio of the person you're meeting with. See if there's a personal connection. She was a city councilwoman in Harrisburg. She was a TV reporter prior to her service on city council. Just look for any type of connection to your life, connection to their life. Maybe you're maybe you're an alum of the university that they went to. Those are the sorts of little personal connections that you can kind of glean from reading their bios and the press releases of the, first couple news items on their site that they're interested in or work that they've recently done.
Just a note, Angie, just because I was looking through some people's pages earlier today, on the off chance that there isn't a website, because there are a handful that don't have websites for some reason, Google is your friend. Just Google their name. If they're not maintaining a website, there's also those other links, Facebook, Twitter, YouTube. Check those out if they don't happen to have a website. Off the top of my head, I know Representative Benham doesn't have a website, but a lot of her information's on Facebook. So if there isn't one, just do your best, use your research skills to see what else you can find.
Good point. Thank you. So the how-to, but maybe what feels like the scary part. how to request the meeting. A phone call to the district office works best. That is what we're asking you to do. I know it's easier to just email using that little email button on that website to say, you know, putting in a request in, but really the personal connection made through the phone call to the district is what works best. Remember that the people on the other end are in the business of helping people. The staff, especially in district offices for House members, are used to fielding phone calls from people who are asking for help. You're asking for a meeting to talk about issues that are important to you. Your ask is easy. Your ask is going to be one of the easiest things they probably deal with all day. So try not to be too overwhelmed. But yes, a phone call to the district office definitely works best. I would know your availability before you make that phone call. So again, we're asking for that time period that President McNeil noted. Check which days you know you cannot meet. Know ahead of time, like what windows you have in that time period. That way, if they offer something on the spot, you don't have to say, well, let me get back to you. Try to have, you know, at least an outline of when you're available ready. Once you make that phone call, and it's going to be a staffer that answers. I've never had the experience of a House member answering their own office phone yet, but I think you can be assured that it's going to be a staff member that answers. And you're just going to state, I'm a social worker. I live in Representative Kim's district. I would like to meet to discuss two bills that are really important to me and to NASW-PA. And you can explain that NASW-PA is the statewide organization representing social workers. You can state the bill numbers. Those bills are House Bill 1841, that's the compact bill, and House Bill 2272, that's the stipend bill. I would leave it at that then, and kind of, well, I also forgot to add that, you know, I'm looking to schedule this meeting between September 19th and September 30th, if possible. And then kind of pause, let them digest that. They might have more questions for you. Oftentimes what we experience is you might be asked to send an email. They'll give you, you know, the scheduler's email address, because each office operates under its own sort of procedures and best practices. But a lot of times the schedulers are like, I'd like to see, I just need it in writing so I have a record of who's asking and, you know, your contact information. So you might be asked to email staff with your request, and then you can expect for someone to follow up.
And I think it's important to note that, like, even if you think, well, maybe I should have just sent the email, that connection to this person called and now I have their email is critical, because then they remember, okay, this was important enough for them to call here. So now I have this email and I will get this scheduled for them.
Yes, agreed. Thank you. Where can you expect this meeting to take place? Most likely in the representative's district office. Like we noted, the address is on the website. Confirm that address when you're scheduling, just in case every now and then they relocate or move, or, you know, things change. So the website's typically pretty accurate, but I would just double check that when scheduling, when you're on the phone with whoever the scheduler is. As President McNeil noted, you could do this virtually if you really aren't able to travel, but you could, you know, make a 20-minute virtual meeting happen on your work break or lunch break or whatever. That's certainly an option too. As is a phone call. I mean, we are also entering a time where every member of the House is up for re-election this fall. Every 2 years, it's every member of the Pennsylvania House and half of the Pennsylvania Senate are up for re-election. So yes, this is a busy time for them with preparing for the remaining session days that they come to Harrisburg in the fall and the upcoming election in November. So, you know, worst case scenario, if they say we don't have time at all for a meeting in that, you know, time period, you could say, can I have a time for a 10-minute phone call? And so I think you giving them options and saying, you know, obviously the best, you know, the gold standard would be the meeting in the district office, in person, face to face, and virtual is also fine. Phone call if you have to. but we'd want to give those options.
I want to interject there just to say that, just to back that up, but also to say, like, I've literally had a meeting with a legislator while they were out doing door-to-door campaigning, and he like stopped on the sidewalk of the neighborhood that he was canvassing to give me a like 5-minute or 10-minute virtual call. So it does happen.
Yeah, it's a busy time of year for them. Who you can expect to meet with. Obviously, we're hopeful that you're going to meet with your representative. Again, this is a busy time of year for them. They might offer district office staff, or it could be some combination of both. All are fine. Obviously, meeting with your representative is important, and it's great to make that one-on-one connection, and we definitely hope everyone's able to do that. But meeting with staff is not an insult of any kind. The staff in these offices are highly skilled individuals who are tasked with briefing their boss on everything that they do. So when you hold a meeting with a member of staff, they're going to pick the best member of the staff to discuss your issues, the most knowledgeable on the issues you're wanting to talk about. So like probably the legislative coordinator in the office. And that person will absolutely relay your information, the talking points, and why these two bills are important to you up to their boss. So I'm gonna get out of there. And I know that Tim, you're going to do kind of what to expect in the meeting and how to conduct the conversation. I did want to make one note that so I'm here on the legislative website, right up, so real-time example, right down here is where you would choose your address to find your legislator. But I wanted to note that the two bills we're talking about, House Bill 1841, I'll just do because it's on top of my mind, and you click search. This allows you to see the co-sponsor memo, which explains it in real world terms what the bill proposes to do. The text of the bill available right here. This allows you to actually read the bill, print it out if you feel more comfortable having something in your hand when you go. Oh, sorry. I need to get back. But really quickly, I wanted to note, if you click history of the bill, this is the list of co-sponsors. So once you look up who your legislator is, I would recommend typing in House Bill 1841 up here, and then House Bill 2272. You do them one at a time. Click on history. Look at this up-to-date list of co-sponsors. If your representative is already a co-sponsor, great. If they're a co-sponsor of one and not the other, thank them for co-sponsoring the one, urge them to co-sponsor the other. If they're not a co-sponsor of either one, that is the ask. Ask them, would you consider signing on as a co-sponsor, and then supporting this when it comes to a vote. But as we talked about, members of the committee are important. It's also important to note if your representative's already a co-sponsor of either of those bills.
And I would also say, like, in there was also a link to partly in the history. It also said like what committee your bill is in right now, or if anything has happened or changed with it. So that would be another place to check. And then you can click directly to, like right there on the actions list at the bottom, it shows
which
the last thing that happened was that it was referred to professional licensure. And then you can click on the professional licensure committee to kind of learn more.
Yeah.
I have one other hot tip. On that website at the very bottom, there is a link under the offices and info list. It's on the bottom right-hand side, and it's the legislative directory. So if you like me or like President McNeil mentioned, still get nervous about talking to these people. And I struggle very much with my hearing and the phone and hearing people, especially say their names on the phone. There is this link where if you click agency and office, you can select the house and then select the representative's office you're calling, and it lists most of the staff. So you'll know who could potentially be picking up the phone by name, at least when you call. So if that part is nerve-wracking to you, I always like to have a little bit more information, and having the potential names that I might hear helps me process that information. So that's been a tool I've used for years to help know like who might answer the phone at the office. And you know, it humanizes the entire experience a little bit more. So that's, if that you find that useful, feel free to use that too.
Good tip. Okay. Tim, I'll pass it over to you.
Okay, let me see if I can share these slides that I whipped up. Everybody seeing those okay? All right. Okay, so meeting with a legislator, as was stated before, I think by a few of the previous speakers, you're meeting for elected representative, and there's some people going, "Oh, you know, I'm meeting with somebody important here." This is your elected representative, and the staff are people whose main function is constituent service, so they're there to serve you. So this should be a meeting of mutual respect, and you're a social worker, so you should be able to use those social work skills during this meeting, those engagement skills that you're learning either now in social work school or that you already have mastered. So think about, you know, those skills, the warmth, empathy, and genuineness, the rapport building. And listen, I've been in the legislative office, and I've had people say to me, "Well, I'm not going to vote for you," and so that doesn't work. That doesn't help. I would not recommend that approach. This is, as was talked about before, a group meeting. These are actually Kutztown University students that previously met with the executive director of the Human Service Committee in the House, Melanie Brown, who happens to be a social worker. She worked for Chairman DiGirolamo. And if you're meeting with the staff, that's not a bad thing. And I love what you did there, Natalie, was showing us how to get to that directory. Because when you call, and even when I call somebody and I say, you know, I'm looking to set up a meeting or talk to somebody about House Bill 1841, if I say, is Bill Evans in? He's the chief of staff for Senator Schwenk. So when that person answers the phone, oh, they're asking for Bill Evans. This is somebody who knows what's going on here, right? So you're going to get more respect, and you're going to be taken more seriously if you look up those names ahead of time. Or if the person on the phone says, "Well, I can't get the senator. She's, you know, going to be in committee meetings or whatever it might be, but I'm going to have you meet with Bill Evans." And then if you say, "Oh, wow, I'm going to meet with the chief of staff," you know, boom, you know, you have obtained instant credibility in arranging that meeting. And the person scheduling that meeting is going to say, "Hey, Bill, this person, do you know them? You know, they asked for you by name." And then you're going to have them a little bit paying attention. So it will get you further. And lastly, I would say the person that used to handle, I used to have lanes to my office and my staff. So the human service lane was somebody who actually I worked with at the Schuylkill County Mental Health Office. She had been the caseworker that trained me when I was hired to do children's intensive case management. So, you know, the people that you get are going to be people who know the subject matter most of the time. I have this acronym I use, don't forget your hat. Do your homework, make an ask, and give a thank you. The homework part is really important because, again, to be taken serious, you should know what you're talking about. Make sure that you check that web page, look up a little bit about the bill, read that co-sponsor memo, and by the way, the co-sponsor memo that you saw there from Representative Abney, who also happens to be a social worker, SW from Pittsburgh. I think they're Pitt again, from the University of Pittsburgh. But we helped him. We were asked to help formulate that language for that co-sponsor memo. That's some of our language in there that was used. So read through that, know who the prime sponsor is. This is all part of speaking that language. So when these are the kind of questions, and if you're not familiar with this ahead of time, you're going to be, what is a prime sponsor? That's the person who's offering the legislation. So if you're able to know some of these terms ahead of time, it will make that conversation much more productive and much more meaningful, and you'll be taken serious. Opposition to the bill. I don't know of any strong opposition to 1841 at this time. So that's an even stronger reason for your representative to either co-sponsor or follow through with whatever ask you have for that legislator. Who's supporting the bill? There's a number of different organizations in the state. There was just the teaching compact. I think, is there a teaching compact as well?
Yes, there was a teaching compact bill that recently passed.
Yeah. So in terms of other professions are looking for this same thing. Nursing for sure.
Yeah, there's a nurse licensure, interstate medical licensure, physical therapy, psychology, and then a number of other professions, right, like us, who now that this FBI background check issue's been cleared up and Pennsylvania can actively participate in compacts. Yes, we have other groups like us who are seeking compact legislation.
So this is a popular
cosmetology probably being the biggest other licensure compact that's out right at the moment.
So this is a trending topic in policy making here. And then the last term I have for you is fiscal note. That means, like, what's this going to cost? What is the state going to have to pay, or what money will we have to come up with to make this happen? And if I'm understanding this correctly, I don't think that it's pretty much a revenue neutral proposal. And that would mean that we don't have to come up with millions or billions of dollars to make this happen, which is another reason. Very important in policy making. I tell my students, the F word, one of the strongest factors in policy making, the F word, funding or fiscal note. And in this case, it's not a real factor or problem.
I will note that with our other bill, the SWEET Act, the 2272, that funding is the question that comes up all the time.
And that's good to know. That's part of your homework. If there is a question about funding and looking for revenue sources to make something happen, you should know that ahead of time. And if you offer that to the legislator, if there are drawbacks or negatives to it or hurdles, if you're offering that up and providing that in that role of an educator, that social work role of educator, the legislator is going to appreciate that. Oh, this person is honest with me. They're telling me ahead of time that this is an issue or a concern that we're looking for a solution to that problem. As simple as possible for the handouts. Just a couple bullet points, and I'm sure NASW will make those available to you. But anytime you're handing something to a legislator, believe me, there was a condition I had. It was called legislative attention deficit disorder, LAD. There's just so much going on. You don't have a lot of time to focus on. So as brief and to the point as possible, usually 3-4 things that are bulleted, highlighted, and then your ability to explain that concisely is invaluable. This is just a little bit of a sample of what talking points might look like. There's Chairman DiGirolamo. Yeah, whenever you're meeting with them, try and get some consent ahead of time if you want to take pictures and post those. I think we want to do that, and believe me, the representative or the senator is going to want you to do that because they're always promoting themselves and trying to show that they're accessible to their constituents. So I can't imagine them saying no, but it's proper to ask ahead of time just to make sure. Ask. This is the important part. When you get there and you build that rapport and you've been working you've done your homework, getting to that ask is so important. If you have a meeting with the representative and represents, oh my goodness, I love social workers. You are fantastic. The world needs more social workers because you are all so great. You're wonderful. My mom was in hospice and she had a social worker, and that social worker was so helpful to our family. That's wonderful, and you feel good. But if that's all that meeting is, we didn't accomplish anything in terms of our advocacy. So make sure you go in there with a clear ask. If you go back to the bill and you see that they're a co-sponsor on there, then you're not going to ask them to co-sponsor it because they're already a co-sponsor. But you may ask, would you send a letter to Chairman Burns and ask Chairman Burns to call this bill up before committee so we can get a vote before the end of the session? Would you ask the floor leader to call this bill up on the floor? So make sure you have a concrete ask. And sometimes legislators are going to have reasons for not wanting to do things, but they may offer you something else. There was a bill before me one time in the Labor Committee, and it was going to really make some people angry. I was for it, but I didn't want to be for it if I didn't have to get beat up for being for it. So I said to the people who wanted it, I said, look, I'll vote for this on the floor. If it comes up on the floor or it comes into committee, I'll vote for it in committee. But I'm not going to co-sponsor it because I don't want the heat for no reason. And people may have those kinds of things going on. And if you secure their vote and agreement to support it in the end, that's what we're looking for. It's just a nice picture of my friend, Representative Mirabito. He retired. He was the county commissioner up in Lycoming, but I'm just trying to show you, these are just regular people by and large, and people that you can talk to and communicate with. Always give a thank you. Thank you for your time. Thank you for supporting, legislation in previous sessions, whatever that might be. If it was the BSW licensure bill at some time, if you're meeting with Representative Kim, say, oh my goodness, I understand your work. Thank you for all you've done. I remember you were the NASW Legislator of the Year. So thank you for that. Thank you for accepting our award. Whatever you can say to let that person know that you appreciate what they're doing and appreciate hearing you out, it's important.
Can I interject there, Tim, just for a second?
Please.
The thank you section, depending on who your representative is, you may find it challenging if there's somebody who disagrees with you politically and, isn't particularly someone who supports your issues. There's generally always something to thank them for, whether that be like some kind of bill that passed unanimously that you support, that you can bring up to them. But if I'm ever in the situation where I legit can't think of anything honest that I would thank them for, then you can thank them for things like, thank you for serving in the legislature. Thank you for taking on this volunteer role. Thank you for, even if you might disagree with them about, children's issues, for example, if they're very passionate about children's issues, you can thank them for their interest and their passion, and that that you share a common interest in protecting or serving the children of the Commonwealth. So sometimes you have to be a little bit more creative with your thank yous if it's somebody that does not share your views, but it's still really important to do.
Thank you for having such a wonderful staff. They were so helpful in setting up this meeting today. That's always nice. And the staff loves to hear that too. So say it loudly so that they can overhear it. I think that's all I have. I just put this up just to show it was a little bit of a different atmosphere, right? We have these big events that our whole chapter is invited to. This will be your own meeting with the legislator. And then I'll make these available to you. This is just a little bit on the legislative process. I wasn't planning on reviewing all this with you. I just wanted to get it into the recording so people could pause it and take a look at what that process is and why sometimes it's so grueling. And people hear, oh, well, then if the bill doesn't gets signed and it gets vetoed, then it gets overridden. That really doesn't happen often. And I think the last time there was a veto override was in the 1970s, and it had to do with the Pennsylvania lottery. So it doesn't happen often.
Makes
That's
sense.
it. I'll yield the floor.
All right, thank you. So I think you're still okay, there we go. I was gonna say, I think you're still sharing. Okay, so I'm going to talk about after your meeting next steps. And generally speaking, I just put together, and this of course will be available on the website and on all of the materials that you'll get connected with for district days. But it's a relatively simple form because part of what your experience will be, may involve questions. You may have a good meeting, you may have a terrible meeting. Whether it's good or terrible or just completely benign and nobody, and everybody was nobody really said anything. It's all valuable information to us. We just basically want to get a good handle on what your impressions were of the meeting, who you met with, and just to be able to track that these meetings happened so that we can generally know, when we're walking back into the General Assembly, are we able to do it from the perspective of, oh, we know you had a meeting with our members lately, or we know you've been hearing a lot from constituents. That type of thing can make a difference in how we approach our advocacy. So it's really, really important that we have the follow-up piece of that. And I tried to make it as simple as possible, as in just put in your own information so we know who you are, the names of the person that you met with, the role of the key, it may have been 5 people in the meeting, but so just emphasizing that, if the representative was there versus if it was a staff member or somebody else. If there were other people who attended that meeting with you, we'll want to know that too. And then the biggest thing that is on there is this question 6. And that is just tell us any details about the meeting, your impressions, how it went, their feedback about either both of the bills. Sorry, my light auto shuts off. And really just anything you like to share, but that's a completely open space. And if the if your outcome is just like, yeah, I met with them, they were non-committal, then just write that. And then that's sufficient information. And then the follow-up question, that one I did not make a mandatory question for this survey. Did any questions or concerns arise that we should follow up on? And that basically, even if somebody asks you something, let's say you're meeting with them about the suite bill and they specifically are like, well, how much money are we talking about or whatever, and they ask you something that's not included in the talking points that we're giving you, then one thing that's important to know is not to like make up an answer or guess or whatever, but just to come back around and say like, I'm not sure about that, but either I'll get back with you or I'll have somebody from NASW get back with you. And then just write that question down somewhere in your notes, on your phone, whatever. And then that would be what to put in here. Like if they said they would be a co-sponsor, then that's a relevant one. We'll want to make sure that they actually get on the co-sponsor list. If they said like they want to know, you know, how many MSW graduates are in Pennsylvania in a year, and you know, and again, we don't know that. Then just write down the question and we will, and then we can be able to follow up with that office at a later time. If you do have more than one meeting, you'll be able to submit this multiple times. If there are like, let's say a group of 5 people attend the meeting, you all 5 of you would be welcome to submit this form, but the most important thing is that at least one of you does. If we get it, you know, 5 times because everybody had different impressions and you all want to share what your impressions are, that's great. But the main thing that we need to know is like that the meeting happened and and kind of what the gist of it was. Okay, and that link will be available as part of the materials and on the same places where you'll find the talking points and everything else. Angie, was there anything else you wanted to share about like the kind of information that's helpful to you to know, like from what happened?
Yeah, I also really love to know when someone has a personal connection to social work. So very often what we're finding out as we do meet and greets with, you know, legislators and people of interest, we just had a meeting. We actually were supposed to have a meeting with Representative Daley. She was called away to something else. Her chief of staff met with us for a little bit, for like 10 minutes while she was apologizing about having to reschedule. We chatted with her a little, found out, was it her? Did she say her sister or Representative Daley's sister?
I think it was her sister.
Yeah. Chief of staff's sister is a social worker. And so, but we're also oftentimes finding out that people who do constituent service work in especially district offices, oftentimes are social workers. So that's great for us. That's great information for us to have. So if there's some kind of personal connection, either through office staff or a family member, during lead, we had somebody had a meeting with Representative Malagari and he volunteered. My wife's a social worker. I asked her why she wasn't here today and she said she's social working today. So yeah, that definitely add that into the information box that people
Very true. Yeah, because with that Representative Malagari, we did not know that one ahead of time. And it was, I think, our vice president at the time, Claire Dente, was the one who was in that meeting. She let me know. And then after that, we had a very productive meeting with Representative Malagari, and then later had him speak at our press conference as a result. Okay, so that's the follow-up question. I know we've still got 20 minutes. President McNeil, you're the wrap up, but if you want to leave time before wrap up for Q&A, we can do that too. It's up to you.
Yeah, so we definitely have a Q&A. I did want to just talk about what happens after district days. So the 19th to 30th is the days that we have sectioned out for everyone to go meet with our representatives. And then after that, we will be having an online debriefing. It will not be this long. It's probably going to be something quick where we just meet and just get some feedback in addition to what Joanna's the report form, but just a chance for us to come and sort of meet as a group and talk about how did you enjoy it? Is this something that we continue? Because what we're looking at is that this is not going to be a one-off thing. We're looking at having this maybe a couple times a year. As I mentioned earlier in the presentation, this is about continuous advocacy and often. We know from when we see what the nurses have been doing and the teachers is that they're constantly in there advocating. And so some of the feedback that we have gotten is that, we would like to see social workers more having conversations with their elected officials. And so we're looking at doing this, a couple times a year. So we want that feedback. If this is something where you're like, this works, but is there something else that maybe work better? Any type of feedback, whether positive, negative, we would like to hear because we want to know how to make this better. But we also want to know, how do we make advocacy more convenient for all of you? I am in a very, privileged position where I can be flexible, right? I can flex my time and, I work from home and all of that, but I understand that not every single social worker has that flexibility. And so if we can create something where it's a little bit more flexible and a little bit more accessible for everyone, we would like to look forward to doing that. And so that comes with the feedback from all of you. So the debriefing part is just that we'll come back, we'll have a meeting and just talk about how every thing went. So that will be on Zoom. I do not think off the top of my head that we have a date set, but I'm assuming it's going to be another 6 p.m. one. We just don't have the date set, and we definitely know it's going to be before the conference. So it's going to be a very quick turnaround from the end of District Days and then our online debriefing. So with that being said, do we have any questions, any comments from anyone? I did see the chat going with some, comments and everything. So we just want to open it up and see if there's any questions or comments from the audience. Good. So we're all good, right? So can I get some thumbs up of who is looking to participate in the District Days? Okay, I see one couple. All right. Okay. I think that's good. All right. Okay. So all the thumbs are coming up. Great. This is good.
I would encourage everybody to talk to colleagues, students, friends, anybody social workers that classmates, former classmates, get in touch with. Encourage people to check out this webinar. Do this work. It's a kind of an exciting political time as we get close to a big national election, and we talk about, what can I do to participate in the policymaking process? This is what you do. This is what you do. This is what affects your life. So this is a great introductory way to start. You're going to be very well supported by NASW-PA. The materials are going to be easy to digest, and you've got staff, your board, and us to answer any questions that you have that you come across as you're going through the process.
Angie and Natalie, it would be like, I know you've talked to me before about some of the feedback that you've gotten from legislators about like the importance of hearing from constituents, and specifically like visits versus some of the other stuff. I was wondering if you would be willing to share that.
Sure. I'll start, and Natalie, you chime in, because I know this year we've both been in presentations where legislators have talked to groups and they've shared stories about what moves the needle for them. So I'll just share that, we've been told form emails, not great. They kind of oftentimes get filtered out, and they won't even reach the legislators' inboxes. So those, while it's nice to hop on, a petition or sign something or click here to send a letter to your representative, those are the email filtration systems are getting smarter, and those oftentimes aren't even making it to their desk. Written letters are better. But if it's a form letter that they're receiving 2, 3, 4, 5 of, the same thing with no personal details, those are just going to be put in a file. what really matters, especially to House members, because their districts are smaller and they have a more personal connection, is something personal from the constituent. So a personal phone call, a personal meeting. And if it has like third, I would say top is a meeting, an in-person meeting or virtual. Next would be a phone call, a personal phone call where you're having a real conversation. And then last would be an email, but it's a personalized email. It might include some talking points about this is why this bill is important to me. Here's a summary of what it does. That can be kind of copy pasted, but the why it's important to me part really should be personal to you. Natalie, do you want to share?
Yeah, sure. So I had Rep. Venkat present to another group of clients this year, and the story that he told that stuck with me is as a newer legislator, he's talked about how he had a lot of ideas coming into this job, what it would be like, and what his expectations were. And it's always interesting to hear him talk about from a healthcare provider perspective, what he brings to the landscape and how he sees this world and how it works. And one of the things that he's mentioned repeatedly is that, if one social worker calls his office, it's like, okay, I've got a constituent calling, great. If two social workers call, it's okay, something must be happening. We should probably take a look at it. If you get 3, 4, 5, the more people you get calling on an issue, on any one issue in particular, he said that sets off alarm bells. If I've got 4 people in a week calling my office, 4 social workers, 4 whatever, calling about, say, the sweep bill or the compact bill, then I really need to look at it immediately. He said it's great to send emails, especially if they're personal. Those personal stories are key. If you can relate whatever you're talking about to a personal experience, personal story without violating HIPAA, that makes it much more human for them. But I will never forget him being like, yeah, if I've got 5 people calling my office in a week, he's like, that's huge for me. And I need to look at it right away. And I need to get a staff member on it. And we need to talk about it and see what we can do to help and how it's impacting our constituents. So don't think that it's not going to be impactful in any way. Just one constituent calling makes a difference. It does raise it for them to say, I now have a social worker calling me. I've never had that happen before. Right. So I think that's key to remember is if you think this is, yes, it's nerve wracking. Yes, it is all of those things, but it is far more impactful than you think.
Mm-hmm. And I would say too, that story in particular makes it so if you're like, oh well, my colleague so and so who also lives in Rep Patty Kim's district, I know they're gonna do this, so they've got it covered. Right. I don't have to do it.
No. You should all do it.
Go along with or ask for your own phone call or virtual meeting.
Yes. Yeah.
Because hearing it from multiple people definitely leaves an impression. And I'll share one more story. This is years ago. This was chairman of the Senate Professional Licensure Committee was just not moving a bill that we were, pushing really hard for, and everything that we were doing from our professional capacity in our Harrisburg, job was just not moving the needle. And finally, we were like, we really just need to mobilize his district. We need people in his district to make phone calls and schedule meetings. His staff called us a couple of weeks later, and she was like, he's asked me to schedule a meeting because we need to get this bill out of committee because he had 8 people call his office. Mm-hmm. 8. Mm-hmm. 8 phone calls moved bill out of committee, and that went on to pass and be signed by the
Yeah, so, I think it's important to remember you have far more power than you think you do.
Yeah. I'll share one of my related stories, and then I'll pass it over to President McNeil to close us out. But I do want to say first, thank you to everybody who is here and to everybody who is participating. And of course, thank you to all of our speakers tonight. I really appreciate the information that you've shared. So my story, I was living in another state at the time, and we were working on getting our title protection bill passed. And yeah, and we had gone through, like, every year we were getting just a little bit closer to the finish line. Like one year we got through committee, like, so we'd been doing it for a long time. And the bill had gone through the Senate and it passed, but only by like 1 or 2 votes. And then never got to the House that year. So we were working on, like, okay, this next year we're going to do it. And so we started a campaign of meeting with legislators, like one-on-one, especially with those Senate committee members who had voted against it. And I just really want to emphasize, because it never, like, we had somebody who was an active opponent who had voted no on the bill on the Senate floor the year before, who became a co-sponsor of the bill the following year based on exclusively one in-person visit with a social worker who was in front of them saying, like, hey, this is important to me and this is why it's important to me. And so the fact that that can, like, happen, that it can be that 180 degree of a position, is just a really big emphasis of the kind of impact that we can make just by, like, talking about our profession and what it means to our elected officials who probably don't necessarily know what we're all about. And with that, I'll pass it to President McNeil to close us out.
Right. So again, I'm going to reiterate, thank you for coming tonight. I hope you found this information very helpful. I hope that this meeting has encouraged you to participate in district days as well. And so, as I mentioned, we will be putting more information out about district days, especially with the talking points. So please make sure that you are following us on social media. We are on LinkedIn, Facebook, and IG. So whatever you're on, we are on all 3 of those, as well as we do have our mailing list, which we send out, like, in our e-news, and sometimes we do email blasts. So just making sure that you're checking those avenues over the next couple of weeks for more information. When this information comes out and you have questions, please feel free to reach out to myself or Joanna, so that way we can make sure that we're answering any questions. Again, this is the first time that we are doing something like this on a statewide level. And so there's going to be some hiccups, there may be some things. And so just make sure that you're in communication with us, and if you have any questions. So with that being said, again, I appreciate you all for coming. You can go enjoy the rest of your evening. And I just learned that it is a holiday on Monday. That goes to show that I have no idea what time of year we're in right now. So please enjoy your weekend, your holiday weekend. And I am so excited for District Days, and I hope to see you all participate.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, everybody.